Welcome to the Prof Talk Pod, brought to you by the Engaged Professor. Every 2 weeks, join us as we talk about tips and tricks to help you connect with your students, engage with industry, and stay up to date on all the teaching trends. We'll give you actionable strategies that will help improve your teaching today. Thank you for being here. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to a solo edition of the Prof Talk Pod. My name is Becky Achen and I am your host of the show. And I want to talk today about something that is pretty important to me that I spend a decent amount of time thinking about right around this time of year. And that is planning for the first day of class. Now, I know I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I think it's so important that it's worth revisiting as it's something many of us are thinking about as we get ready for our fall classes. Now, I know that many of us probably experienced as professors syllabus day as a student, right? Where the first day you get handed the syllabus, you go over the syllabus, you leave. You are always hopeful that that day is not going to last longer than, say, 15 minutes and frustrated if you're there the whole time, sometimes as a student. And part of me wonders if that feeling is more related to how expectations have been set for us than what we really do want out of that first day. Maybe we've been conditioned as students to want that to be a very kind of blah or boring day. And as I think about it from my perspective as a professor, I really think a lot about how do I want students to feel after their first day in my class? Because I know I don't want them to feel like, oh, well, this is just another college class. It's going to be walking through a textbook, showing up, listening to some lectures. Every once in a while, we'll probably have to interact with each other. I want them to walk away feeling jazzed, excited, upbeat, wanting to come day two. I want to retain them. I want them to show up on the first day and say, yep, that's exactly the class that I want to be in. Now, I recognize that there are some challenges with being a little bit more aggressive or doing more on the first day of class other than just going over the syllabus. And I say just going over the syllabus as if the syllabus isn't important. And it certainly is important. It's very important to go over the syllabus and to have students have clear expectations of what being in your class means. You want them to come back knowing that this is the assignments they're going to tackle, the content they're going to consume, and the things they're going to be asked to do. That's certainly important. But I don't want them to just think that's all that it is. And I know that that's really important that we talk about the syllabus. So I'm certainly not saying that you completely get rid of the syllabus and the discussion of the syllabus on the first day. But I do think that it is a real opportunity for us to set the tone for what the class will be like. Now, if you've been listening for a couple years or reading for a couple years, you likely know by now that from my perspective, it is our job to sell a little bit the value of the class that we are asking students to take. And you can hate that if you want to, I understand. But at the same time, without students, universities can't continue to function. We need students to be in our classes, to be in our degree programs for them to still exist. And because of that, there's a little bit of sales involved. We need to convince them that this is the right fit for them, that the content we have is valuable, and that what they learn is going to be worth their time. And the syllabus day, the first day of class, is our opportunity to set the tone for what they can expect in the class. And it also says a lot about how we show up on that first day, how they think they will show up on the upcoming days. So if you show up in this space and you're kind of like, hey, I know you don't want to be here. I'm just going to throw this syllabus at you, hit some main points, and we'll pick up on Thursday or Wednesday or Friday or next week, whenever the class meets again. And you're a little bit lackadaisical, haphazard, don't seem like you really care. It signals something to our students about whether our class matters or not. If I, as the professor, can't be bothered to show up with some excitement, with some engagement, with some sort of value proposition, why would students be bothered to show up the next day and the next week and 2 weeks later in our classes if we haven't given them a reason to? And again, I can already hear in some of my good colleagues saying, well, Becky, it's not my job to give students a reason to care. They're paying for a degree. They want to get the degree. They better care. And sure, I can get on board with that. But if that's the case, if students are just here to get degrees, why do we need 70 different majors? Why don't we just have a college degree? What is the value that we provide in all these additional programs that we have? And in professional performance, it's something that we have to think about all the time because our degree is not easily recognizable. It's not something that you read in a catalog and you're like, "Oh, yes, that's exactly what I want to do." We have to educate, we have to talk about the value and the benefits of being a student in our programs. And so we approach our classes from that same perspective. And I truly believe that all of us can really think intentionally about what we say on our first day that gets students to buy in to what we're asking them to do, to what we want them to learn. And it doesn't matter if that is a biology class or anthropology or business communications or an intro to whatever field they might be in. Getting that buy in and getting them to care right off the bat is a way to build connection with your students and make them want to come to your class, not feel like it's just a place they have to go. So for me, that's how I approach the idea of setting up for my first day with students. I know there's challenges because not all of the students that show up on the first day will be in my class a week later. We all know there's a lot of moving in and out and around on that first day, in that first week. And at some institutions, in the first 2 weeks, the add drop period is a little messy. And we might say to ourselves, well, I don't want to cover anything important because the students who are adding the class late are just going to miss it. And yet, we still go over the syllabus on that first day. So if the syllabus isn't important to those students as well, why would we have one? So I understand that perspective and I know that that will require whatever you do on the first day those students to make up. But I'm not necessarily asking you to cover some amazing content, right? I'm asking you to think about how can you get students to buy into the value that your course provides. And the students that miss that, what you want to have happen is that when they show up that next week for the class and they ask their classmates, "Hey, what did I miss?" The classmates say, "Oh my gosh, it was awesome. You missed this and this and this." And you might have to meet with them to reset the stage and reset expectations for those students that come in and out. I'm not saying you have to do something graded, right? Or something that if they miss, they won't possibly understand the rest of the course. Just something that is engaging, that gets them to want to come back. So there's challenge one. We do have some in and out and moving around in our classes. It's one of the reasons when I have semester long group projects, I do avoid setting up groups until we're a week, week and a half into the semester. I never used to do that. I used to be one of those people who assigned them right away, hit the ground running. Day two, we are already working in groups to get through a semester long project. That's something that I have restructured classes to make sure that I'm 2 weeks in before I get group set, because that can be problematic when students move in and out of the class. So as you think about that, one, I hope you feel a little bit of connection to the idea that building buy-in with our students matters, that it is part of setting the tone for what you want to be a good class. Now, I know not every university professor or teacher went to get their PhD because they wanted to teach, because they were so excited about integrating with students in the classroom. I understand that. But at the same time, do you want to show up in a classroom where everybody hates being there? Is that also good for your own work life experience? Is that good for feeding into your research and your service and everything else you might do at the university? If you every other day during a week spend an hour to an hour and a half dreading the experience, I can't imagine any of us want to feel that way. And our students don't either. So even if you didn't go to college to become the professor that teaches, you wanted to become the professor that researches, you still need to think about, how can I build a classroom experience that makes people want to show up? So what are some things that you can do on the first day that go beyond just covering the syllabus and move into trying to build some of that excitement and buy-in and momentum? And as much as I know people hate these, I really think that a well thought out icebreaker can really bring more connection with your students and get them excited about getting to know each other throughout the course. As I think about what I can do to get better as a teacher, I do tons of group work. My courses are not primarily lecture based. We do some lecture and some content, but there's lots of activities. And I can tell about a third of the way into the semester, when students are finally comfortable with each other, those activities start to be a lot more effective. Students do a lot more talking. They're willing to take different roles, push beyond maybe the basic answers. And I truly think it's because they trust each other a little bit more. They know each other a little bit better. And something that I'm thinking about this semester as look at my first day plan is, what could I have them do to start building those connections early and start to break down some of that, I don't know you very well, I'm kind of scared of you perspective that just naturally comes when you're in a room of 20 or 30 or 100 or 200 people you don't actually know. And one of my favorite icebreakers has always been the bingo game, where you give them a bingo sheet and they have to fill it out and get to know each other. And I do like that. I think that's a great option. I think it's a good way to get students to talk about things maybe outside of your class. But I'm thinking this year about doing something a little bit different, starting the class by just saying, "Hi, I'm your professor. This is the class you're in. I hope you're in the right space." And then having students build something together in groups that requires them to communicate and be creative. And the goal eventually will tie back to it later on in a course about entrepreneurship and building your business and building your brand. There's lots of ways we can tie into that, especially thinking about the amount of collaboration or teamwork that's required for a successful business venture to work in the long term. But in the short term, the goal really is to give them a connection, a struggle together that will bind them a little bit and make them excited to come back to class and see what we can do next. It also mirrors a lot of the things that we do. We do a decent amount of tactile things in the classes that I teach as we think about problem solving and creativity and ideation and all of the things that go into entrepreneurial thinking. And so that is another potential benefit, is that they'll start seeing the class as something they do, not just a place that they show up. And I wanna set that tone right off the bat. Now, I think there are lots of other creative possible icebreaker activities. I've talked to colleagues who created board games, and in the intro class on the first day, they'd have their students just play that board game. It's connected to course material. It kinda serves a little bit as a, "How much do you know now?" so that they can think about all the things they will learn throughout the semester. I've seen colleagues start with a Jeopardy game, where it's kind of like a test how much knowledge you have about the topics we're going to cover. And they still do it as a game where there's teams and there's a prize for the winner. That can be a really fun way to get students engaged and also give you an idea for what students might already know or think about your discipline. It doesn't have to be that elaborate or game based. Another thing that might be effective on your first day is just to ask them what they know, think, and wonder about as it relates to the topic or your discipline. That gets them kind of in the mindset of what you are hoping to accomplish and in your content, and also gives you a lot of information about the things that they might be curious about that maybe you didn't include in the class, but you might be able to integrate into the class. Now, there are tons more ways that you can start off that first day to try to get students engaged. And if you have some ideas, I would love for you to share them in the comments or send me an email and I'll compile a list. I'm always looking for more creative ways to build student engagement on that first day. But that's my first suggestion for you, is to think about, how can I get them interacting with each other? In large classes, that might be a little bit more difficult, but certainly can still be doable or manageable, if you're willing to maybe push a little bit outside of your current comfort zone and your current way of always doing things. The next thing that I think is really important on that first day is to actually go over the syllabus. But most of us have, especially if you're at a university with a lot of required policy, I don't know, 10 plus page syllabi. And in a world where it's important to have everything in that document you might need, you want to make sure you don't leave anything important out. So you have a very long document. I would encourage you to think really carefully about how you want to highlight the important parts of that document so that you don't lose students halfway through because they're already kind of tired of listening to the first 3 syllabus days they had. And now they're listening to what in their minds might be exactly the same. So, first, like starting with those learning objectives, one of the things that I was especially impressed by this last semester is that our students in our classes identified and said that they learned what the course was designed to teach them. And I think part of that is because we are very specific about talking through why we're doing things and the learning outcomes that we have. So, designed or decided that they will accomplish. So that I think is another really important part about syllabus day is actually going through the syllabus, but highlighting what's most important to talk about. For me, I like to spend a little time on my late work policy because it is different depending on the level of class that I'm teaching. So if they had me before, I want to make sure it's clear to them what might have changed. I also spend some time talking about my generative AI use policy. Now, in the past, I've spent time going through this in class on the first day. I think this year I will be pushing that to the second day and giving us some time to engage a little bit more with what we think about AI use, how we've used it, how we don't want to use it, how we're worried, concerned, excited, frustrated, whatever those words are about generative AI. I'm finding over the last few years, students are kind of changing their perspective. Many are very, very scared or angry about how AI might impact their future opportunities and yet sometimes will still choose to use it in their work. So it might be a good place to open up a dialogue on a day. It's in my mind, I know we only get so many for content, but in my mind, it's worth taking half of a class period to just talk through what their thoughts are and how we can move forward together on our approach to using AI in the class. And you want to see what other policies are really important to you to make sure that you highlight those without reading every single thing. Lastly, I always think it's important to go over major assignments and give students not only a timeline of approximately how things will work throughout the semester, maybe not exact due dates for everything if you're not ready for that, but kind of what the overall roadmap looks like and how those specific assignments attach to the learning objectives that you've already covered. And starting out with that as a perspective, you can continue to draw back to that and go back to that throughout the course of your semester to say, hey, here's where we started. Here's where we've traveled to. This is how B and A connect. Now we're moving on to C, which is connected to B and A. And these are the assignments and how they're built. The more that you can do that, the easier it will be for students to make those connections. So, starting out with that roadmap on day one can give them a more clear idea of how it progresses throughout the semester. And again, sets that tone for this being a course that works as a whole and not as independent pieces. And on my perspective, what I hope that does for students is help them see why it's important for them to be there, to show up, to engage in the course, because it's not separate pieces. Oh, I missed today. It's fine. All of the pieces work together to make this bigger picture, to take us on this journey to work toward meeting these learning objectives. Now, I hope as you think about your first day, you're thinking about the structure now and are willing to, if you've never done it, push yourself outside your comfort zone to do something engaging, interesting, interactive to get students to connect to each other. Show up telling them the why your course matters, building buy in from day one, and telling them the value proposition of what your content in your course is going to cover, giving them clear guidelines as to what they should pay attention to in the syllabus, the most important parts, the policies that are integral to their success in your class, and then painting that overall picture or building that overall roadmap for how this will work together throughout the course of this semester. That kind of perspective on the first day makes it not just a throwaway day, but a real guideline for how the rest of the semester will go. And again, I know many students will miss it. I know students might not expect that. In fact, they'll say, gosh, Dr. Aiken's the only one who kept us for the whole day. And that might happen sometimes. I might be the only one, but I'm also hopeful that they'll say, but I have a really good idea of what I can expect from her classes, and I'm excited to go to the next one. Does it happen 100% of the time? I'm sure not. But I want to do everything I can do to impact that and make sure that that is their perspective, that is their experience, and that is the outcome. So I hope that you will be encouraged to do the same. Again, if you have some unique ideas for how to build engagement on that first day, get them excited, connect to your discipline, please put them in the comments. Email them to me at becky@theengagedprofessor.com. I would love to share a list with others in the newsletter so that we can start to build a community of understanding and teaching practices together. And if you found this useful, please share it with somebody you know. I very much appreciate you being here. Please comment on the show, give us a rating or review. It helps us get found. And I will see you next time.